1, 2,
Standing
go.
by.
Everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the final episode of 2024 for the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in. And we made it to the end of another year, and I'm exhausted, but I'm so happy to talk to you guys.
It has been a long 2 weeks, and and we've got 2 weeks left for the year. That's it. At this time that we're doing this, just less than 2 weeks.
Yep,
we'll be in 2025.
But
2025.
It's amazing. We were just talking about when our last day of work was for the year. Yep. My last day was technically last Thursday. Mm-hmm. But I've been busy. I've been really busy.
Yeah. I was telling Bill before the show started, my last day is tomorrow, and I don't have to go back till the first week of January. January 6th, I think that's the Monday I'll go back.
Nice.
I've taken 2 days off this entire year, so I am due, and I am tired.
I always end up losing days.
Yeah.
And I get a considerable amount. I think I'm at 33 days. That's not a bad chunk of change.
No.
The only thing's better is, some of those companies that have like unlimited PTO.
Yeah, never actually that people do like I do and never take off.
Yeah.
I took my week staycation earlier this month, so I'm actually going to be working over the next 2 weeks, except for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. So I'm actually going to be, at the office for the next 2 weeks.
Steve, I've done that too, and that's like the most productive time you're ever going to have.
No one's bothering.
It is, because everybody else is gone, so I can get all my stuff done, which is great. In logistics, obviously, we do have some crazy stuff that usually happens around the holidays at the end of the year, but.
Yeah. But also, apparently for us, January is going to not be slow. They're not characterizing it as slow, but there's the ramp up to February will be a bit crazy. So I may end up taking some more time in January as well. Maybe like extending Martin Luther King Day by like a day on one end and a day on the other. I want to travel. I haven't traveled in ages.
I am going to do a better job and that's going to be one of my resolutions for the next year, even for what they're worth, is like doing a better job of like scheduling time off throughout the year and actually taking it. I
did a jump start on the resolution. So you're looking at somebody who has been to the gym at least every other day since the first of the month. So, and I'm getting pains in the right places. So
You've been to the gym more than I have.
Yeah,
I have, because
busy for you.
It doesn't look it, brother. Whether you posted today.
Yeah.
It doesn't look it.
Yeah. So I am. I've only been to the gym like one day this week. I'm normally like a 6 day a week gym goer.
Yeah.
And just I didn't get to go today. I came home and started wrapping Christmas presents for the kids and stuff like that, because we've got. So I forget what's happening tomorrow. We've got stuff going on. So some friends are coming in town tomorrow. We've got that. Saturday is we're doing stuff with them. And then also Saturday, for those of you who don't know, is the solstice. And it's the longest night of the year. And all across the country, service providers for the unsheltered community will be getting together, and we hold a memorial service for people who have passed away throughout the year while experiencing homelessness. And so I'm helping put on that Saturday too. So we got that happening. So it's just a really big, busy, big thing. So, but in good ways, like good, productive, putting good karma out into the universe kind of thing.
I'm literally making a note because Caleb, I have a new acquaintance who is starting a podcast in the new year about the unhoused and mental health.
Very cool.
So I wanted to connect the two of you, and I'm literally writing that down right now.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. I mean, that's I do that. That's my heart. So would love to have that conversation.
Let me remind to do that. And plus, they're also in the leather community, so you may have some more to talk about that too.
Ooh, I like it.
That's going to be an interesting podcast.
Yeah. But apparently, the podcast is dedicated to that side of his life, not
right
the more fun side.
Hey, we to quote Whitman, we contain multitudes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So. I'm so happy to talk to you guys. I'm so happy because it got to the point where like, am I ever going to get here? It's like, it's just like, and there's also like something weird going on with Facebook because it seems like it's reviving posts from a few days ago a lot now.
Yeah.
So, I typed out, I always have to deal with seasonal depression because I'm the last of the family line and everybody's gone, and the holidays were always a very happy time for me, and I don't have that anymore. And that post seemed to be getting a revival. So I'm getting all these like messages as if it was contemporaneous to today.
Right.
Doing better, and seriously, like once I get to the point where I'm able to lay the grave blankets, then I'm like, I got to that point and I'm a little better, you know,
almost like a closure.
Yeah. It's a shitty tradition to have to engage in, but one that I don't ever want to miss. So
I mean, yes. So I get what you mean by that, like because of what it represents. But I respect you for carrying on that tradition because look, anybody who has parents is going to lose parents at some point, right? And there are so many people who, once that happens, they just walk away, right? And so I respect that. I respect that you do that every year, and that's become a tradition because it carries on their legacy and a memory, and it says a lot about how they raised you. So you should, From a friend, like that means a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And also it extends to someone I never met. I've talked about this before. 3 stones over from my grandfather is a woman who, when I was growing up, I mean, this stone always had flowers. It always was, kept immaculate, and there was a point in time where there were no more flowers, and if you walk past, there were additional members of the DeAngelis family that were buried. So I always leave a flower on Jeannie DeAngelis's grave. I never met her, but that inscription has meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
Because it's really like if you ever want to see love in words, go to a pet cemetery. Go to the pet cemetery. Like the cemeteries are one thing, but the pet cemetery, those are expressions of love that will just gut you and make you smile, a big smile at the same time. You walked into our kitchen and into our hearts. Just things like that. So if you ever need to feel emotion, go to a pet cemetery and read the inscriptions on the pet. And plus,
if you need to experience full catharsis in public.
And also, if you're a creative of any type, go there for names.
Yeah.
I wrote a play, and there's no way that wouldn't have happened without Abbey Glen, where my dog Pepper is buried. If there wasn't a sign, if there wasn't a cat that was buried named Tuffy Ganella, and that immediately became a character's name in a play I wrote. I mean, it has a beautiful sound. It has a beautiful East Coast sound, and it was perfect. So
that is So being from the South and being from a very rural region of the South, like pet cemeteries are a very interesting phenomenon because we don't have those here. Like we just don't. And I grew up out in the country, so like I can show you where all the dogs are buried underneath the trees and stuff like that. But like we don't have pet cemeteries here that I'm aware of. And so I mean, that's such a neat and interesting phenomenon to me. I wonder if it's regional, but I mean I know it's got to be. They've made films about it, so
yeah.
I know it's a thing. It's just not a thing that we have down here.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Those films are not documentaries. They are good for a scare though. Or poor Fred Gwynn. Oof. Oh man.
Yeah. But well, there is the famous Earl Morris documentary, Gates of Heaven.
Oh yeah.
It's about pet owners. That all have a pet buried at one particular cemetery. And maybe this wasn't the most auspicious way to start off the podcast, but I think it ties into loved ones in the holidays, and I number the two of you as loved ones.
Absolutely.
And I only wish your packages were getting there before tomorrow.
I've got my package right here.
I've always got it with me.
Also, like, I got a really inappropriate gift from somebody, and they didn't provide their name, and it's like the kind of thing like you have to be a really good friend to me for this to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to be sharing that right here on the podcast.
Afterwards, I'll go back. It's this kind of thing. Like this was not cool.
Or was it really cool?
Yeah.
We'll help you. We'll help you decide.
You will help me decide. Okay. So what are we doing for this show? For our final episode of 2024 and our holiday edition? Well, we had a very big teaser trailer that dropped today. So we're going to be talking about the launch of DC Studios. We also, 66.6% of us went to see a comic book based film that we're going to talk about very briefly. And we're going to be each talking about a new book because that's what we do. But since it's the end of the year, we're also going to talk about what we felt was the best title or graphic novel that we read this year. So it's kind of, it's not a lot of terrain, but it's still probably going to be a very packed episode.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Where do you start with the Superman trailer? I mean, I don't know.
I'm gonna start with Guy Gardner's bowl cut.
Yeah, which is
Nathan Fillion
is like comic accurate.
It is. I saw that and I about fell on the floor laughing. But it's that thing where you're laughing at it, but giddy that it works. It works so well.
Yeah. Well, just to give people background, if for some reason you're watching this show or listening to the show and you're unaware of this, the teaser trailer dropped for the upcoming James Gunn written and directed Superman, which is the first of the new DC Studios, DC Universe titles that is going to be theatrical. We already have the first DC Studios, narrative film because the first one that was released under it was Superman. Which was the Christopher Reeve documentary. That's actually the first DC Studios project. But in terms of the narrative universe, we have the animated Creature Commandos, which we'll be talking about also. But the Superman trailer dropped today for release on July 11th. And I know it's July 11th because I saw that trailer like 60 times today. It was just on repeat. And we got Crypto. And we got other heroes like the aforementioned Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific.
And Metamorpho, which was
but you had to look really closely for that, brother.
Yeah.
You had to look really closely for that. I thought it was an exquisitely crafted trailer. Just completely divorcing yourself from whatever the topic is. It was just a really well conceived trailer. And I was just smiles hearing the John Williams music, but in a very different context, and very quick images, but all of them kind of spoke to me. And to me, I'm watching this and I'm seeing that's Superman.
Yep.
What I saw there was Superman as I know him, and I was very, very happy. Very, very happy.
I mean, we've been waiting for this film, I think, for the past 2 years at this point. And I wouldn't consider myself a Superman super fan, but I have been reading every article. I've been checking out every behind the scenes photo, every post about like, oh, here's a new costume angle, here's this, and and it's just sort of been building and building and making me very giddy. And then of course yesterday we had sort of like a teaser for the teaser, which any other time I would roll my eyes so hard they would fall out the back of my head. But I was like, I saw the teaser for the teaser trailer and I got goosebumps, and I'm like, what is this? This isn't even the full trailer. This is a trailer for a trailer for a trailer. Like, what's going on? And then of course today they dropped it, and actually, like, I absolutely agree. It was so well put together as a trailer, like as something that's supposed to really drag you in to like grip you and say like, I definitely want to see this movie, without giving away the entire plot. In fact, who knows what the plot is based on this teaser trailer. I mean, we've got enough information, I think, to piece together a bare minimum of a plot. But we get these beautiful moments that are really cool and unexpected for a Superman movie that we haven't really seen in live action before. We haven't seen Krypto. We haven't seen Guy Gardner as Green Lantern. But it's just it's just really fun. And the way that David Corenswet looks as Clark Kent and as Superman, the way that Rachel Brosnahan looks as Lois Lane, I mean, these are just great interpretations of the character.
Yeah.
Costume wise, the way that they're styled, like everything, you're just sort of like, I get it. Like, here's this big hulking dude with a crazy weird perm and big glasses, and he hunches very similar to how he's depicted in All-Star Superman. Like, nobody would think that he's Superman, because look, he's kind of like, oops, sorry.
I thought that was great.
I may be really big, but I'm kind of
hair is so different. Yeah. And that's something we really haven't seen in the comics that much. They basically have the same hairstyle.
It's the curl. That's it. Like, the only thing that's out of place is the curl.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I thought this was really cool. And you can probably see about 1 million at this point different reaction videos to the teaser trailer.
Yeah.
But some of those were fun to watch, because I was like, wow, they are feeling exactly how I'm feeling in this moment watching this for the 6th time.
So I'm excited about this, right? Just because. So if you had have asked me before I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3 if I thought James Gunn would do well doing a Superman film, I would have said no, because James Gunn does really, I mean, he's a trauma guy, right? Like, he does really stuff that borderlines on edgelord, kind of this, that, but if you watch Guardians 3, he does some really cool stuff, right? And he does some really heartfelt stuff in there, and he really gets, packs the empathy and the emotion in there. I mean, he does what he does with the trauma-esque things, and it's it's a little off kilter at times, but it's the spirit of it that matters. And then comparing that to what we've had in Superman in the previous iteration, which I did not care for, just really at all. And that's somebody who didn't really have reverence for the spirit of the character. I think they had reverence more for a particular portion of the comics readership, right? And they were playing to that base, and it didn't work. And so I feel like this does have reverence for the spirit of what Superman's supposed to be. I think it's going to be really fun. I mean, there are so many neat little things packed into that trailer that just flesh out the DC universe. I mean, and this is the same guy who gave us Weasel, right? Like, this is by the same that same director. So it's going to have some really cool and quirky things. But I feel like he got, I mean, who knows? It could just be the way the trailer's edited, but I feel like he gets it. I feel like he got the character.
I mean,
Yeah.
you do get scared because, trailers can be a bait and switch.
Yeah.
It's
Ask Any Hope
like
fan.
I'm still waiting for the Prometheus film that was in the trailer to what we got.
Yeah.
That is the most amazing trailer. And we can get that. And also, I mean, also like, I came of age, in the 80s as a film goer, and there were many times where the music video showed all the best scenes. So I also carry that kind of worry. The Phil Collins video for Against All Odds. It looks like this kinetic, amazing movie. You watch it, it's dull as hell. But great video. So there is always the worry of that sort of element. But I have a feeling we haven't even seen the best.
No, I don't. Then that's the vibe I get. Like I'm weirdly trustful of this, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And
well, also, actually, it's also obvious. He's taking notes because apparently this was a bone of contention with Warner's. That the first two that were provided, they didn't feel really sold the film well. So to me, that also makes me feel optimistic about the future, because this is a filmmaker and he's basically heading this entire division from a creative standpoint, that has a tremendous amount of power and a tremendous amount of say, yet he's listening to other people, and that makes me feel good about the future in general, about what we might see with DC Studios.
That being said, though, I'm going to be that guy. I want the studio to keep their hands out of it, because movie by committee has not served them well. So
not DC, no.
Yeah,
not
DC. So just don't do that. He's an auteur. He is. Let him do his thing. And he's earned that.
But it also sounds like we're not going to tell you how to make it work, but you have to make it work.
Yeah, and I'm good with that.
That's the vibe I got from reading some of the coverage, because it seemed most of the people that were pestering about it were not studio, were the sales department.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's going to be anything as ridiculous as changing the entire ad campaign for John Carter because Mars Needs Moms bombed. But I do think an ability and an openness to listen to certain people is helpful, and when there's so much on the line here.
Yeah.
But looking forward to it, and we'll be talking about a lot more over the next 7 months, because we'll be anticipating
it's a long way to July 11th now. And something that also like a kind of connection for me, because the very first movie I ever saw on the first day of release was the first Superman.
Okay,
that was the very first movie. Not even Star Wars. Star Wars I saw on the third day, because I was lucky enough to be in a market that had it in 70 millimeter. And it was like in 16 theaters. It was only like 2 miles from me. But that was the very first movie I ever saw on the first day of release when I was like 12. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Set the bar pretty high.
Yeah. So, but at least one thing we don't have to wait for, that's part of DC Studios. You mentioned the first film was Super/Man, which is the Christopher Reeve documentary, which if you want to have a great cry, there you go. But there is something that is a weekly series, animated, that is currently running over on the Max streaming service, HBO Max, and that is Creature Commandos, which, Bill, and you and I have been watching this.
Oh, it's so good. And, just Caleb, to your point, think of the first 2 episodes as Guardians 1 and 2, then you get to the GI Robot episode and you get your 3. For a
robot that just loves to kill Nazis. Oh,
that touches your heart in a way.
That's really all I needed to know about him.
Yeah.
I'm already
like
invested.
a bullet to the heart. It's just so good. Or an explosive round to the temple. Either way, it feels it's very impactful. And then
I have
this
not
week's
seen the episode that dropped today. Have you, Steve?
Okay, I have.
Okay, because
that
was a hell of a last line last week. So, am I going to be happy?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's definitely, it is a transition episode. So, there's setting up the next part of this storyline, but also flashing back to the Weasel and a very seminal moment in the Weasel's life, which the Weasel, of course, it's a joke. It's a running gag that is this crazy character that is constantly licking himself and like eating things and just being wild and crazy. But there's actually a very, poignant moment in his life that becomes a disaster and really sets him up for,
it sounds like that's like something life. All of them are sharing. So.
Yes, they all have like these horrible moments in their lives that demonstrate that they are not monsters. This is the, the premise of this is that because Amanda Waller is no longer allowed to use humans based on, what happened after the Suicide Squad, she is, forced to use monsters that are imprisoned at Belle Reve. And most of these are monsters mostly in just physical attributes, but maybe not so much in what they've historically done. Obviously there's some crazy supervillains in there, but each of these characters is getting sort of the reveal and their history and their past and how they ended up kind of where they are. And I believe it was the second episode we had the history on the bride that also reintroduced us to Frankenstein's monster, who is played by David Harbour. And this episode 4, he is not a bright man. And I love David Harbour.
Also, with the bride episode, you had an incredibly touching sequence of events, and then you're treated after that to a montage where I was rolling on the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is wild and crazy.
This is more quintessentially James Gunn. So far from what we've seen, but it's just been a great ride, just an absolutely great ride.
Yeah, and if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, if you liked the Suicide Squad, absolutely, I would recommend watching this. And I think probably what might turn some people off is the fact that it's animated, but don't let that stop you. It's fun. They're able to do a lot with the animation that they probably wouldn't be able to do as well in live action. They can take a lot more risks and do a lot more crazy shit without.
I mean, if you're going to invest, if you're worried about animation, though, DC's not what you worry about animation for. Like,
no. They have a pretty good history.
Yeah, they've got a great track record. I mean, and I'm not even being flippant with that. Like, they just do. Like, I'm not a big animation watcher. I don't watch a lot of animated films. Other than the things that I watch with Roger because he loves them. I'll watch DC animated stuff, not without question. I trust it. Again, it's just like their track record speaks for itself.
But it's also a hard R. This is very much a hard R.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the sex scene in episode 2, but we got the sex scene in episode 2.
Well, Harley Quinn, right? I mean,
yeah.
So which one's the harder R, Harley Quinn or this?
In terms of violence, absolutely this.
Okay.
In terms of mature content, it's kind of a draw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say
Harley Quinn has a lot more? She's got a lot more, room to work with. This is a I believe 10 episode limited series for this first season. Harley Quinn's just starting their 5th season. Is it 5th or 6th season next week?
5th season plus the Kite Man spinoff. Yeah.
Plus the Kite Man series. So so they've had a lot of room to run with on that one. But this one's just doing a great job setting up this team of misfits that with characters that most, unless you're a hardcore DC fan, probably have never heard of before. And just getting to play with them in a very interesting way. I love it.
Is that Rick Flag in it?
No, it's
Rick Flag
Dad.
Senior. It's Rick Flag
Dad.
Senior, and you get to see him.
You get to see a lot of Rick Flag Senior.
You get to see a lot of them.
Silver bells.
Yes. But yeah, it's and so far the real big bad that we've been introduced to is Cersei, but that may not be obviously the final boss.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. We're only 4 episodes in. We'll soon be halfway through by next week, but yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to continue to watch this. I'm happy that this dropped first, because I was kind of worried. I was kind of like, who's going to watch this when you get the Superman movie? But no, this is great.
Okay, so we talked about DC. Marvel, not Marvel Studios, but Marvel through Sony recently had a theatrical film that was released. And as if you follow the trades, it did not exactly do well financially, but that doesn't mean that Steve and I didn't see
Contribute. We contributed to the box office.
With the meager box office. And we are talking about Kraven the Hunter. Steve, do you want to just offer a few words about what the film's about?
Sure. So Kraven the Hunter stars
about those abs.
This man, and so 7 of the stars of the film are right here represented. So you have Kraven, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and 6 of his abs. Basically, it's a retelling of the origin of Kraven the Hunter, one of Spider-Man's biggest and longest running villains. Except there is no Spider-Man in this movie. And Kraven is set up here more of as an anti-hero than a villain, where he's the oldest son of a Russian crime family, and he is taken hunting by his father out on safari in Africa, where he is mauled by this great tiger or great lion and left for dead. But young Calypso, with her magic Calypso potion, brings him back to life, and now he has the powers of, savage beasts and is a super hunter, where he makes his living kind of going after bad guys and mafia monsters in the present. And that includes the Rhino, played by Alessandro Nivola, looking kind of thick and meaty, surprisingly, even though he plays like super nerdy, which is also a very strange choice. But he does turn into a rhino at some point during the film, and it looks pretty good. But yeah, I mean, the action's fun. If you like watching this dude, Aaron Taylor Johnson, look hulking, and like he does like the meaty shoulders first walk, like through the entire movie, which is it's a look. He also runs really fast barefoot in the streets of London, which was kind of cringeworthy. You're like, no, glass. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It makes a lot of the same mistakes as all other Sony movies that depend a lot on CGI, rather than good writing, acting, editing.
Yeah, the writing was where I was just astonished, because the first 18-20 minutes of the movie are fine. It's a very well-constructed origin story. Because going in, to me, like, Kraven is a middle-aged man. My conception of Kraven is much more like Russell Crowe, who plays his father. In my head, because it just seems that that's the kind of history and legacy that character is about. But I thought Aaron did a much better job than I was anticipating. But it did feel, like I said, like the first 18, 19, 20 minutes were fine. After that point, it almost felt like you had access to one script. We're taking it away. You have to use this script, and the other script wasn't nearly as good. That's what I really felt like, because the dialogue from that point on is like, it's preposterous that anybody would talk this way in these circumstances at certain points.
Well, the ADR that was used is very clear. Like, okay, we're doing some ADR. So it's like, did you have a completely different script that you were working with, and then in the re-edits, use the same footage but just replaced everybody's words? And there's some very obvious scenes, and it's kind of distracting, actually.
Yeah. And I thought going in, like, hey, when it started, I thought, hey, we're in for like a fun Die Hard type of movie, even if the dialogue, like, I'll just throw Die Hard out, like, I want blood, if we got that, I would have been okay. We didn't even get that. There's some very good. I mean, there's 2 Oscar winners in this film.
Yeah,
in the principal cast, and they just didn't have. They didn't have a good cook. Let's put it that way. They probably had a very good cook, and he quit like before at the appetizer. Because I really do think if you just saw the first 18, 20 minutes of the movie, you think, oh, I really want to see this film. I thought it was pretty good. And, things that I forgot about from the comics, how, like who his half brother is. That delivered. That was like one of the issues from the script that I did say it would say delivered, but I don't know. They just never going to get Rhino right. I mean,
it's
for some reason
we've had two different rhinos. I think two, maybe 3
rhinos, and I just think cinematically, for some reason, it's just never really going to work.
Yeah.
See,
but there's some good action. There is some good action.
There's some very good action sequences.
Some scenes that are a lot of fun. The effect with the foreigner is interesting the first time you see it.
Yeah.
But then when he does it again, you're just sort of like, is this,
can we hurry it up? Yeah. That was the thing. There were various points in the movie where it's like, can we hurry this up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's get to the
let's get to the end point here.
It's just hard to believe this is the same guy who played in Kick-Ass.
And Quicksilver.
Yeah.
And Quicksilver, yeah.
And Quicksilver.
So,
I mean,
I haven't seen it.
He's thick.
Yeah, he is. Well, he's not thick enough. I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to or critique the film. But like when I think of Kraven, I think of somebody who's a lot thicker than what he is. Yeah. He's not nearly as honestly. You give me Henry Cavill as Kraven, yeah, that's the body type, right? Like that I think that works well. I mean, I'm obviously not opposed to this. I like this. I would watch myself on it. So it's great. It's just it's a weird body type, but.
Yeah.
I like what you said about Rhino, because we keep seeing these villains like the Lizard and stuff that could be cool in the right circumstances but don't work. But I mean, look, if you watch Black Panther, they gave us M'Baku, and I never thought we'd get a cool version of M'Baku, or like I was like very nervous about how that could ever happen, and they did. So I think there is a version of Rhino that could work. I think there's a version.
It could be, but I think anybody attacking that in the future will know, like, hey, the first 2 times just didn't really work. We have to consider, we have to consider the interpretation here. Very clever.
I had Paul Giamatti in the first one. I'm like, how do you take and make Paul Giamatti bad?
I am Rhino.
Rhino. And also there is the problem with the fact that people don't seem to realize that Rhino's horns are not on their forehead. And I'm like, no, it's part of their nose, but I understand you have difficulty creating that in CGI, but if a horn grows out of your forehead, you're a unicorn, not a rhino.
I'm unicorn.
Unicorn. I saw some interesting scientists in New York. You should probably check them out if you want to be supervillain.
I am a rhino and I want blood.
How do you make Paul Giamatti bad? It just
he's so over the top. I mean,
he's good over the top.
When you do have actors that are good at over the top, sometimes they're also very bad at over the top.
Yeah. I would include Alessandro Novolo in this. Bad over the top. I think Seymour
Hoffman had his duds too.
That's true. That is true.
And I think that is the case where, in the 60s, these would have been actors that would have been relegated to like the visiting uncle on Bewitched or a villain in Batman, and
so gay. Is that what you're saying? It would be the gay one.
But
yeah,
it's good that there's a an outlet for them cinematically now. But I do think that that's something that people have to be aware of, where, actors that are way over the top, it can be delicious or it can be like,
yeah.
So. But
I did like him much more than I thought I would. He's probably the best thing in the movie. He does a great job.
Yeah. And also like
I definitely cared about him. Cared about him. Yeah.
And there's eye candy. So I mean, like it works. Like there's some good action scenes that are fun to watch. There's some eye candy for people who just want to look at pretty people or big beefy dudes. I mean, Russell Crowe. But yeah.
There's always like
free on streaming.
I liked him till he got fat, and I was like, that's when I started
I started really liking him.
I started really
like he was good in Gladiator, but this one, yes,
that is a feature. That is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
Give me your Russian accent. That's kind of over the top and crazy. Why not?
All right. Well, we've talked enough about films and media based on comic books. Let's talk about the actual.
Yay!
So in terms of books to start out with, I know we tend to do like big two first. All right, so I think I'm the only one with a big two book out of books, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I'll start. But it does come from somebody who definitely has a very firm foothold in independent books, and I'm talking about JSA number 1 and 2 with my nice covers here, but I provided the standard covers for Steve, and the gentleman that's writing this book right now is Jeff Lemire, and I have to pronounce the artist name correctly. It's not easy. Diego Orlotegui. Is that? Am I close? Okay.
I would say it's either Orlotegui or Orlotegui.
Something like that. Okay, so anyway, here we are. We have a new ongoing JSA book, which is just after the wrap up from Jeff Johns' decades-long involvement with these characters. And where is the JSA where they start in this book? Well, they have reformed, and they've reformed for good. And, one of the best things about particularly John's run is it was cross-generational. And that's where we start, but that's not where we finish. So you'll see some of the characters here. You see some of the older characters like Jay Garrick, Flash. You see Ted Grant as Wildcat. You see a bearded Alan Scott, who has become, I think at this point you can call Alan Scott a gay icon. I really do in terms of comics. I think he's known for that. And you also have the younger Rex Tyler as Hourman. You have Green Lantern's kids Jade and Obsidian. You have the Kaled version of Dr. Fate. You have the younger Dr. Midnight. So that's where we start, but that's not where we end up, because with this team reformed, very quickly members go missing, and one is in critical condition that they did find, who was Jakeem Thunder. So they were attacked, but the team with Jade left as the chairperson does not know what precisely happened. And, Jade's on a team with her brother, Obsidian, and, sometimes Jenny Lynn and Todd, they love each other deeply, but they're not always on the same side of an issue. And we see that here completely with Obsidian and Yolanda, the younger version of Wildcat, and Jesse Quick. They're kind of forming their own sort of faction within what's remaining of the team, with the others a little closer to being in line with Jade's line of thinking. But the first thing is to figure out what happened to the missing members and who specifically attacked Jakeem Thunder that put him in the hospital. And as they start investigating, it's pretty clear that there are some figures like Johnny Sorrow that may be involved. But what we're looking at is a new incarnation of the Injustice Society. Now, the first issue comes with a fantastic last page, a fantastic cliffhanger, which is pretty Lemire, I have to say. He's very good at the buttons on his individual issues, and this definitely had that. And then the second issue explores why there's a schism between the brother and sister and the other members, and also what specifically happened. We don't have the full story, but we have enough to, again, keep you on the edge of your seat. So if you've liked the previous versions of the Justice Society, there is so much to sink your teeth in. But if you've also never read a Justice Society book, this does give you a very, especially with what essentially is the comic book equivalent of a montage within the first 4 pages to bring you up to speed. Without scratching your head why there are so many members and why there are members that are in their 20s and there are members that are like technically like 104. And it all makes sense because he's a very good storyteller. And, that's one of the things I really like about this is there's so many nods to the past. Here, this is pretty damn close to the cover of All-Star Squadron #1. Which is a JSA aligned series with, in that case, they were picking members, but here they're fighting about them. But I really like what Lemire brought to this. He brought his voice. I've always loved when he does superhero characters. I've always loved it as much as I love his own stuff and his weird takes on the world. I really like when he is kind of limited by what's in that particular sandbox, because he still is always able to provide that very clear, distinct, singular voice through it. And the covers I have, they form like a poster, and this is Jeff Lemire as artist.
Oh, nice.
There. So, and you get all the members. So, and again, a very good superhero book. It's sometimes you get some big name artists, and it's like a horror book disguised as a superhero book, or it's a comedy book disguised as a superhero book. This is a superhero book, and I'm very happy it exists. So that's the book I want to talk about. JSA, first 2 issues are out.
See, I will be getting my first 2 issues probably in the next 3 or 4 days.
Steve has the DCBS worries that I've had in the past, whereas I got my books really quickly.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to this because it ticks a lot of those boxes that remind me of when I was reading back issues of Infinity Inc. And, JS, like the different JSA miniseries that they had out in the 90s that were just really fun.
Yeah.
Those were, it looks to do all that, plus bring in all the stuff from like the, from Stargirl's Crusade. I can't remember what the title was on that from a couple of years ago, but that led into the new JSA book, that miniseries that finally ended, I think, after about 1.5 years, 2 years.
Yeah, there were a lot of delays. I think
many delays on it.
I think it took 19 months. Yeah.
Yeah, it took so long to get out those issues. But
it also gave a very distinctive Jeff Johns coda to it. And now, because I think anybody who tackled JSA is going to be compared to the Johns run, which is wonderful.
I'm sure.
Absolutely,
which is absolutely wonderful, and it's why he became one of the biggest writers in comics. I think even more than Green Lantern, because I think this was really where you saw somebody strut their stuff.
So I binged when I started getting back into superhero comics, just right before New 52 back in 2011. Before that, I took like a whole summer and I binged every Darkest Night, Brightest Day, book and tie-in,
Mm-hmm.
and then did the entire JSA run from Jeff Johns. And just, I mean, it took maybe about a week, just like, reading through everything, and I loved that. Loved it. It had so many wonderful moments in it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's no way there
I'm
ever
glad
in
he's
hell
moved on.
would have been a Black Adam film without that series.
Oh, absolutely.
No way in hell. What he did with
half
that
of the
character
storylines are
was just astonishing. Was just astonishing. There was so much potential with that character, and he saw it. And I don't think anybody else did. I never thought it. You know?
Well, Shazam too. I mean, Shazam had moments to shine. And just
like there are moments in that run where I just like the part where
Nuklon
with Courtney and Billy have developed a relationship, but Captain Marvel appears as an adult where she's a kid, but they're actually the same age, and they can't tell anybody, and it comes to a breaking point, and it's heartbreaking because I think everybody has been there where circumstances did not allow for a relationship you had to continue. I think everybody's been there to some degree, where it just there was traffic, and you just couldn't get to the same destination at the same time. And I think everybody's been there. So yeah, it's just great superhero-y stuff, and Hawkman makes sense, after more than 10 years of the most convoluted continuity, and it's still a mess, but at least when he was writing it, it felt okay.
Well, if he didn't write that, then would we have gotten the Venditti series?
I was going to say the Venditti run for me is incredible.
Yeah, but the thing is, Venditti leaves. Venditti's over, and then it's a mess again.
It's back to Nutsville again.
But I think in Lemire's hands, if he has stuff to talk about it, anything to talk about it, I think we'll be okay. And this entire year was I would say last year and a half was a very good time for JSA fans, between Stargirl Mini, JSA Mini, Maxi, I guess, and the individual Sandman and Flash and Green Lantern books. It's just been a good time because none have been duds. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And when you guys get to reading it, I really want to hear your opinions.
I will. It's on my list of things to get read. I just haven't been able to get it read.
Yeah, because I know for both of you, it's a creator. I think you both
absolutely.
We both. It's not like I have a Jeff Lemire long box that I segregate all of his books into, because I think he's that good of a writer and not the quintessential writer of our time or anything.
Yeah.
Well, and Bill, to your point, it's Jeff Lemire writing superhero stuff. Jeff Lemire's been writing the JSA for the past 6 years, but it's called Black Hammer, and he took it to all the places where now he gets to play with the kind of the DC originals. He's played with what works, and I think that he'll be putting that experience to good use. So,
and he has also promised, as he put it, one hell of a JLA JSA crossover.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Okay, so that's the book I'm currently reading, and let's go over to Steve. Let's hear about what you're reading.
So I, on a whim, decided to pick up something that, kind of it hits some buttons on me, which is, crazy sci-fi, sort of galaxy spanning, military based kind of stuff with a secret agenda and rebellion, blah, blah, blah. Fun stuff like that. But what kind of intrigued me more on this is one of the latest books that's been co-written or co-created by an actor who's often featured in these types of films. And I'm talking about Arcbound, which is written by Scott Snyder and Frank Tieri, with creative input by Tom Hardy, the Tom Hardy of Venom and many other films fame. And basically this works really well like a pitch for a Tom Hardy movie. in many respects. It's interesting. It's fun. I wouldn't say it's a great book. I do think that both Snyder and Tieri have had, I think better collaborations in the past and with their own solo stuff. But I think it's a fun book. So if you're looking for a fun sort of sci-fi, bang bang, lots of blood kind of shoot 'em up, it's got everything that you need. And basically, it's a book about this character named Kai, who is a soldier for the, I believe it's called the Zenitech Corporation, which is kind of like the final human government and corporation all in one. So it's tasked with bringing the human colonies of the Empire to heal in order to mine this particular type of mineral or this element that allows space travel and expansion through space to continue. The problem is it's also highly poisonous, and so anybody who's exposed to it for any period of time ends up dying horribly from like super cancer, essentially. So in order to mine it, in order to handle it directly, they have a tendency, this corporation, to turn rebels, to turn colonists, to turn criminals into arcs, give them an arc body, which essentially is a cybernetic body, so they can work and work and work and work and never get tired because they're no longer fully human. And this is all sort of being done ostensibly because there's this, alien race that's out there that's super powerful and has been opposing the human expansion. And so it's like, for the good of humanity, you have to, we have to do this. We have to forcibly take over these human colonies, kill half the people and convert the rest of them to arc-bodied slaves. And the main character, Kai, who is an enforcer for the Zenitech Corporation, he realizes this is wrong, especially when the next target is his own home planet.
I have a very quick question, Steve.
Sure.
Is Kai the woofy guy in the middle?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's plenty of scenes of mayhem and people getting stabbed and people getting blown up in this situation, but he gets a message from an encoded server from Earth, and as it gets decoded, it gives him the truth about what's happening, where the colony that they're fighting against, the rebels, had actually tried to peaceably find a solution for this, that they had requested, like, yes, we can compromise, we can do this stuff, but the corporation decided, no, it's better to just massacre as many people as possible and then convert everybody else to slave labor. And so when he finds the truth of that, unfortunately, his partner realizes that he's now become a liability and has him ripped in half. Very gooey, messy way. His body is discovered, or at least what's left of his body is discovered by the people who actually sent him the message in the first place, who have formed essentially a rebellious network to try and stop the corporation from doing what they've been doing. The first two issues, it's a lot of backstory, it's a lot of exposition, setting things up. So it would work pretty well in this miniseries as sort of like the first part of the movie. And then we get the rest of the movie where our hero comes to terms with the fact that he's now been put together in an arc body, which is something that he's been terrified about for a long time, but now has the power to actually make a difference. And it's, again, we're not talking Shakespearean, a Shakespearean situation here, but it's fun, bloody, action-packed sci-fi. I could see this being brought to the big screen in some way, shape, or form. But I think as a comic, it is fun. It's a fun read, and is good for the. I guess it's a 5-issue series for now, possibly to be continued depending on
how is the writing build?
It's billed with Scott Snyder and Frank Tieri as co-writers, and Tom Hardy is he's credited as a contributor, and I think that specifically they say it character development as well. So
okay, I think Frank Tieri is one of the most underrated writers, along with Scott Beatty. I think these are writers that should have just been much bigger names, and he's also one of my favorite comic personalities with a voice like an underboss and just an exquisite sense of vulgarity.
Yeah.
So I did not know he was involved in this. So
absolutely.
I'm automatically 300% more interested in this now.
So I actually say, like, definitely take the interest in that, but also be aware this isn't going to be the best writing that Tieri or Snyder have done.
No.
Because they have a sandbox to play in, and it's very well defined.
It sounds popcorn movie.
Yeah, it's a popcorn movie equivalent in comic book form. And, it's fun. The art, I have to say, I love the art. It's by Ryan Smallman. And he does draw characters in a very almost like elasticy kind of way. Lots of interesting poses and action moves. And he does a really great way of keeping his figures extremely dynamic. And the colors are great with this. I believe the colorist is Frank William. And Buddy Bodwin is on letters. And they do a great job. I mean, this is a well-constructed book. It's got some great splash pages and action. This is something that it's, again, popcorn movie in a comic book form. So I'd recommend picking it up if that's the kind of thing that appeals to you. Oh, it's put out by Dark Horse. Yeah.
Well, it's like popcorn stuff. I'm actually surprised it's Dark Horse and not Boom.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of seem like something Boom would do.
I think a lot of the stuff that was intended for the Comixology originals went to Dark Horse because they gave Snyder the best deal.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure this was one of those. Yeah,
could be
because
the other big, I'd say, like the biggest name title that's kind of co-written, co-created by a major star was obviously Berserker, between Matt Kent and Keanu Reeves, and that one's been, it's been through several series, several volumes, and an actual prose novel. So that one's been very successful. One of the highest, most successful Kickstarters ever.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I thought it. It surprises me that it's at Dark Horse and not Boom. And I'll eat some crow on this. Right when Berserker first came out, I was like, oh, an actor like throwing his name on a comic book, and they're just making a lot of money on Kickstarter, and they're soaking up money that should go to these other creators. I was completely against it. Thought it was going to be trash. Didn't care, but like I'll gladly eat crow because apparently, which I haven't read it, but apparently it's good comics. And Keanu Reeves is doing a great job with it, and he's done right by comics and comics fans, which by all accounts, he's just an amazing dude anyway. So that shouldn't be surprising, but I was very against and to a degree, I still am, right? I was very against these bigger studios going into Kickstarter and crowdfunding and soaking up a lot of that, but I don't really think it matters now.
No.
So I don't think and so
it brings attention. Brings attention to where it's needed, and can help studios do what they need to do. I mean, we're in a very interesting rocky time when it comes to distribution right now. For very big reasons. And smaller studios and smaller titles need a lot of that extra oomph and push to get them on there and get people used to doing that, because there's a possibility that some of those smaller studios, some of those smaller titles will have no other option in a year's time. We don't know. It doesn't look good for Diamond. So, but yeah, and I think that it's a good opportunity. There are some great ideas that are floating out there, and just because somebody's an actor, well known for being in front of a camera, doesn't mean that they can't really pick up a pen and or collaborate.
We've seen Amelia Clark do a great series. We've seen Nicole Maines as a natural storyteller. So bring them on if they have the talent. Bring them on.
Absolutely.
And Des Malchin's books, I love his stuff. Like Count Crowley has been one of my consistently favorite titles of the past several years. And he's fun. He's been also writing Creature Commandos for DC, the comic, not the show. So I like his stuff, and I like what he's got coming out. So
some of La Bamba, but there's some gems.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, but so are things at the big two with writers that we well know or don't know, or people who are just, I mean, like, it's going to be what it's going to be. But like you said, just because somebody is an actor per se doesn't mean that they're doing something as just a promotional stunt. And I think for my own,
I think you can tell. You can,
Yeah.
can absolutely tell where it's just this vanity thing, or that there's, or that they've chosen this medium to tell the story in, because it's best suited for it. So yeah. You can always tell. You can always tell, a comic book which is a failed movie pitch. You know, you can always tell.
And sometimes they're so much better when they realize that it actually works better as a comic book than a movie. Or, leads to something else like Dark Matter, which was a great sci-fi show for 3 years.
Yeah.
That started as a movie pitch that failed, and so they made a 5-issue comic series that did pretty well. So.
All right, Caleb, it's your turn.
I can go now.
Yes.
So I am continuing on my little trek as the end of the year approaches. I've been going through and ordering graphic novels and stuff like that I have not read yet that are on a lot of the best of lists, and it's just to see what's up, things that I missed. So I've got in a book that is on a couple of those lists from our good friends over at Fantagraphics. And the book is called Tinder. It's by a new writer. I think this is the writer-artist's debut comic, Beth Hetland. And so I picked it up. Again, the only thing I knew about this book is that it was on best of list. Didn't really buy it because of the synopsis or plot or the cover didn't necessarily grab me, but it's apparently, something that is being promoted as worth the read. So I wanted to check it out. And I'm really glad I did. It's not at all what I expected. And if you don't know what you're going into, it's got a lot of twists and turns. Like, it goes in some really odd places. It was a fun ride. So Carolyn is the book is about this character named Carolyn all throughout. And it opens up and Carolyn is pregnant. She's got the perfect life, it's kind of what the American dream is. She's gotten married to the dude that she's just head over heels with, and they're financially stable enough where now that she's pregnant, she's going to quit her job and be a stay-at-home mom. And it is everything that a certain segment of society tells you that you should want. It is the quote unquote good life. You're raising your family, you're financially stable, you've got the husband that dotes on you and stuff like that. And then things start to unravel. And you realize that things are not what they seem in a couple of really complicated ways. Some of it is in ways that I'll get to it, but some of it is ways that can't be orchestrated, that it just kind of happens. And then some of them are, hey, you orchestrated your life to be this way, and it went off the rails because it had no other choice. So as you're going through the book, in the first part of the book, you're seeing this life, and she's quitting her job, and that she's going to be a stay-at-home. She's going to be a homemaker, and her husband loves her, and she's having these dreams. But the book, for the most part, is just drawn in kind of a basic purple color, right? It's Steve, if you've got some of the interiors, most of the book is kind of like the top of this. It's just slice of life stuff, basic colors, some really fantastic art. Not a lot of depth to it, not a lot that you see there, but she starts having these really vivid dreams, and that's when the color just pops in, and Beth Hetland just delivers, breaks the kind of continuity wall and gives you these really visceral and vivid colors that she's having these nightmares in. And in the same way, she starts showing you that again, some of this is a facade. The main character, Caroline, has orchestrated her entire life for this, right? She grew up a young girl that was told she needed to find the husband, that was told she needed to be the mother, that's what she had value in, that she was a homemaker, and she believed it. And to the point to where if her life did not turn out like this, she thought it to be a failure. So it shows her starting this job, and the person who would become her husband is in the cubicle over, and she orchestrates a meet cute. And before she does that, she uses social media to find out everything about this guy, so she can find out exactly what makes him tick. And basically she can, she can formulate a way for him to fall in love with her, and it works, right? And so they do get married, and then they start to realize there's these little things that maybe this is not who she really is. And he starts to pick up on things. It's like, hey, this seems just disingenuous, and he's not wrong, but he doesn't know he's not wrong. And then she gets pregnant, right? And she's doing all these things, but she has a miscarriage, right? Or at least the baby is stillborn. And that's when I say, like, some of this stuff is not, life just happens. It's not deserved of her. Nothing she did warrants that. It just, something terrible happens. And it hurts them, right? And she's trying to figure out a way to get her life, this good life, back on the rails. And, she wants to be a mother. And so she's trying to figure out how to get pregnant again. And she's mapping out her cycle. And she's saying, hey, you need to come home from work and we need to jump at it and make a baby at this particular time. And he's just like, man, I don't know. Like you just gave birth to a stillborn like 90 days ago. I don't know. Like, that broke my heart. I couldn't even hold my child because it wasn't alive. And I'm not ready for that. And she's kind of forcing it, which causes a rift, as you might imagine. And so their marital problems end up exacerbating, and he leaves. And so, as before that, leaves right after they're trying to make a baby. And so she's got everything in her head wired up that she has to do this. And she's got this little socialite group of friends that are kind of the same. At least she perceives them as the same. They're all married and they're all, well-to-do. They're upper middle class, if not higher class on the economic scale. And they've got kids and they do brunch and they socialize and stuff. And, she won't tell them that her husband has left. And she starts telling them that she's pregnant, even though she's not. She's faking these pregnancy tests. And she goes to a doctor who's like, no, we checked your urine and you're not pregnant. And she goes back and tells all of her people, oh, yep, 12 weeks along, cannot wait. I'm going to be a mother. We're so excited. She puts up this facade. She's packing things inside her clothes so she looks like she's showing. And she's living a lie, but she's living a lie because she thinks she has to. Like, she thinks in her own mind that is what society requires of her for her value. And as she's doing this, she's having these nightmares, and she starts to develop an obsession. As you read the book, you realize that she's got like obsessive personality disorder, right? And so, like, she's obsessing over her husband, she's obsessing over status, but then she starts that it evolves, right? And so she is obsessing over. She starts picking at her skin, and she starts cutting a little bit. And she starts pulling out tufts of her hair as kind of a tick because things aren't going right. And, she's doing all these things, and she's lying about how she's getting hurt. As the book evolves, it really shows how she's able to present, despite some very obvious things that are going wrong, some very obvious physical injuries that she has that are, anybody from the outside looking in and be like, yeah, you're doing that to yourself, right? That's the only way this can happen to this degree. But she lies to her friends, and they're like, oh, like, we don't want to acknowledge that you're mentally unstable, that you're having this mental health issue that is going to kill you, because that would mean that something's wrong with you, and we don't want to acknowledge that. So we're just going to believe you and go and let you keep lying to us and pretend. And everything just kind of goes off the rail. And it is an incredibly poignant and horrific look at both obsessive disorders and at, like, social pressure, especially on women, but just social pressure in general, the things that it can do to you, the way it can break you, and the expectations that life can throw at you. I won't go too far to the end of the book, but it becomes, it reaches an end point, like that the only way it can. There's no saving grace to this. She is basically self-cannibalizing. I don't know how else to put it, to that point. And I thought it was fantastic. At some point, the book shifts and it quits hiding the ball. It quits trying to be a metaphor, and just really just lands it in your face. Like, this is the only way it can be. I'm not going to lead you to the point. I'm going to tell you what the point is. This is what is happening, and there's no other option. And we're we're not obfuscating it. There's no deep reading involved to understand what Beth Hetland is saying here. And I think that was a really interesting twist from a literary sense, from a craft perspective, to kind of go from that. We're going to show you what's happening here, but we're going to keep the veil up. To all of a sudden, it's just like, no, it's very heavy-handed. And I thought that was a really fun way to do it because, interestingly, it turns into a body horror book. And you don't expect that from the opening pages, at least. Like I said, it throws you a couple of curveballs. I think it is a great juxtaposition when it's just giving you slice of life versus horror. I mean, you can see the page that Steve is showing now. It's a 12-panel grid. It's in color. It is a very aphractic dream. You know, it starts off with like cracks in a wall that's showing you the brick underneath, and there's a mouth that is molding together, almost like that scene from The Matrix. You know, there's a dead fly. She's ripping off her face because in real life she's ripping into her skin and she's cutting herself and she's causing herself pain, and kind of like I said, beyond self-flagellation, it's self-consumption. She is consuming herself with this idealistic version that she thinks she has to fit into to have value, and it just gets horrific and disgusting and gut-wrenching. I loved it. So I think it's a very, very interesting piece of work that says a lot and does a lot at the same time. So like I said, it's produced by Fantagraphics. I think it's well worth the read. You've got to be in the right mindset and the right place to read it, though, I think. So just beware of that. It is not going to be nice to you. This does not wear soft gloves when it hits you in the face. So
I'm glad that you actually provided a picture of where and how you read this book. Which
yeah. So I read it while I was laying in bed with Emmy. So I will also say there is a scene in here where when life is going great, Caroline and the husband have their apartment, they're getting ready for baby, and they've got their beloved pet cat. And as she starts to get into this like obsessive compulsion with consumption, she's picking pieces of her hair out of the drain and eating it, which is disgusting enough. But then it leads to the point that from a nurturing standpoint, there is a scene in here where a cat gets harmed. It doesn't show you it happening, but it happens. It happens. And I think it says a lot that for somebody whose idealistic vision of themselves is being a mother, that she destroys the one creature that is dependent on her for nurture and health. That part's a little rough. Like, I have friends that I would tell them about this because they wouldn't read the book, or they would get viscerally upset with me if I didn't tell them about that. So I think you have to throw that in there. There is some depiction of animal harm in this. This is not a person who is well. This is so take that for what it's a horror story. It is a body horror story that mixes in social pressure and stuff. So Fantagraphic Books, Beth Hetland, this is her debut graphic novel. I can't wait to see what more she does. It's disturbing and fun. And I think the cover is pretty apt. It's not all the time that we see covers that tell a full story, but the cover is this picture of this hand coming in and moving these little wooden figurines and dolls around, which is exactly what she's trying to do. She's trying to orchestrate her life as if she's playing with dolls, because that's when everything is perfect. This childhood idealistic version of the nuclear family. It's disturbing in wonderful ways.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you for that warning.
Well,
all right.
Well, good stuff.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have happiness to share right now.
Hey, I like this is up my alley, so yeah, I'll be picking.
Yeah, it is really good work. The time of the year does not fit with what we're talking about, but it is good work. It is good storytelling. It's good craft. and it's a book that makes you think. And I've said this before, and this is a version of the book that, this is where a book that makes you think is done really well and the craft is there. But I've said before, I can have a book that doesn't have all the craft points and doesn't hit the high notes that it needs to hit. If the book makes me think thoughts and have these deep kind of introspective analysis of it, I'm going to find value in it. This is that, but in great ways. Like, it doesn't disappoint. It's not you're not sacrificing craft for it. So it's good stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we want to transition to from talking about the current books to current, but a little more comprehensive in terms of 2024. So we're each going to pick our favorite comic series or graphic novel that came out within this last year. And for me, there wasn't any choice. This was one of the most easy. This was one of the most easy decisions I've ever had in my life, ever.
It's so surprising.
Yep. So my book of 2024 was Ultimate Spider-Man. Again, this started in January with Hickman and Cicchetto. Still the same team. That is Messina does some. I'm sorry, I forgot that Messina is doing the second arc, and then it's back to Cicchetto. But Steve, that's a little bit weird for the visual. I don't know if you can fix that or not. It's just I'm seeing it kind of blued out.
No, it looks right on my end.
It does not look right on my end.
Try to go ahead and put it back.
Okay, now I'm seeing it fine. All right. Anyway, so what you have here is some of the cast of Ultimate Spider-Man, and with the reboot of the Ultimate Universe, the maker, who was the very evil version of Reed Richards, manipulated how the original Ultimate Universe transpired. And one of the things that he did was prevent Peter Parker 20 years ago from getting bitten by the radioactive spider, which in turn turns him into Spider-Man. In his battle against the maker, Tony Stark was able to facilitate Peter receiving the same radioactive spider 20 years later. But where are we with this 20 years later? It's the ultimate remix. It's very different. You have Ben Parker initially as the publisher of the Daily Bugle. The editor-in-chief is his best friend, a very different version, a very chummy version, a version I would love to have as a close uncle of J. Jonah Jameson. Peter is not super powered initially. He's married to Mary Jane. They have 2 kids, Richard and MJ. There is the Green Goblin, who instead of being an adversary to Spider-Man is essentially his partner in trying to take down the real villain of New York City, the Kingpin. So some things never do change. But what you see transpire through these 11 issues, and it's a great way to talk about how it's structured, because each story, the title is the month in which the book is published. So this is January, and roughly it does take place over 11, 12 months. I'm not sure what the plan is after issue 12. Issue 11 was the most recent issue to come out. If 12 came, it just came out today or something, yesterday or today. It would be very recent. So I don't have that one yet, but through the arc, we see these wonderful developments. Again, there's a reason why Harry Osborn has been turned into the Green Goblin and why he's not a bwahaha villain. There's a reason why we do see Ben Parker without May. There's again, with these stories, everything that happens is kind of seismic. The introduction of the Sinister Six, and this is so brilliant. What the Sinister Six was, and you do see them depicted on this cover here, which is Kingpin, who controls Manhattan, Mr. Negative, who controls Brooklyn. You have the original Black Cat, Felicia Hardy's father, who controls the Bronx. You have Staten Island being headed by Kraven the Hunter. You have Brooklyn being headed by the not too much known about yet, Magneto. And if you know about New York, there aren't 5 boroughs, there's 6 boroughs. And the 6th borough is the subway system. And who controls that from the criminal element standpoint? One of Kayla's particular favorites, the Mole Man.
Mm-hmm.
So,
who is what I want to see on the big screen? Why have we not had that yet? We've had rhinos, but no Mole Man. It's bullshit.
Yeah. So, I think remix is it's the phrase I always go back to with this. These may be familiar characters, but there's something there's a notch that's turned either lower or higher on each of them. And Hickman is such a great storyteller, and when he's non-cosmic Hickman, if that's a good way of putting it, he does flex certain muscles that you don't necessarily see in some of the the greater world building, world ending arcs that he's been responsible for. And it's so great because the first issue I think really blew people's minds. It really did when it came out. And in a year where we've also had absolute Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, those have all been high quality, and the other Ultimate books certainly have their fans, and those are very different takes on those characters. I just think that it's so great that this kept this quality up through the entire year. It's so good, and that's my book of the year.
Nice.
And I don't think you were reading it yet.
No. I'm all in with Absolute, which is great.
Yeah.
But the only Ultimate book that I've been reading is Ultimate X-Men, which, although it is a very unique take on the different X characters, it's not for everybody. It's all right.
But has it kept up its quality from your perspective?
I mean, it's Peach Momoko, so it is as expected. Like she's very consistent in her quality and in her art style, in the way that she structures her stories. Unfortunately, over a long-term series, I think it's a little too drawn out.
Okay.
A little too drawn out.
Okay, cool. But this one is not. I hope we get 8 years worth of stories from Hickman with this version of Spider-Man, at least, before it's handed off. So. Okay. Well, Steve, I kind of gave you the mic there, so why don't you provide what you thought was the best comic of 2024?
Well, I talked about this, I think it was maybe 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, when it came out. And it has since made a lot of best of lists, best of graphic novels. New York Times, I think it was listed on their Forbes as well. And that is Self-Esteem and the End of the World by Luke Healy. And it is slowly loading up, or at least the image is on my end.
It's on my end. Yep.
It came right up on my end.
There we are. Okay. So that is the author right next to this. I think it's perfect. That is a perfect depiction of his attitude in this book. His character, where is ostensibly it's himself, in sort of a very fictional autobiographical way. His character is going through a crisis of self. He doesn't know, really what to do with his life. He's had a couple years since he had a hit graphic novel. He doesn't have any new ideas. He's single. He can't, get his life together. He just feels aimless. And that's essentially the through line of this book is him trying different things to try and be a better person. And throughout it, he punctuates a lot of his, settings with, different self-help mantras that pop up that he reads. He has other characters that sometimes don't even have anything to do with his own story, acting out sort of skits where they're presenting their own lives, and occasionally he throws in a little bit of a very profound, question here and there in very inappropriate ways. Like asking people about, how they feel about, about their impending death, or, do they feel like their life is relevant or has any meaning? It's a very interesting book, and can be a little bit deceivingly depressing. But there's a lot of humor, a lot of self-deprecating humor in this that, can kind of lighten the mood a little bit, even though he's really sort of going through this internal crisis on the page. And in this, it takes place over a course of 10 years. And in his version of 2024 to 2034, the climate crisis has reached, a peak. LA is underwater. Palm Springs then gets flooded. All sorts of things happen. They make a movie based on one of his short stories that he did in the mid 2010s, which they do include in the back of this book, which is really great. So you can actually read sort of the original version that they are now trying to make a film of in this book. And it's really a great, unique read. Luke Healy, if you've ever read anything else by him, he did The Con Artists back in 2022. He also has done a series of strips for several years now called Dogs Having Dates, where it's basically himself as a dog dating other dogs. And, it's the struggles of being a gay man with different body issues. And, he likes bears, but he doesn't like being a bear. Then sometimes he likes being a bear. It's very interesting, just sort of going through his own personal struggles in a pretty funny way. And it's subtle humor. So, if you're looking for big guffaws, you're probably not going to see it in this book. But I think it presents a lot of crises, a lot of personality crises that I think a lot of people in their 20s through their 50s go through. And it's a great read. It's a thoughtful read. And definitely is something that would make a reader seek out more of his work. So, and that is Self-Esteem and the End of the World.
Very cool.
Yeah. Like I said, I talked about this before, but it's definitely a great read.
And Steve, importantly, who's the publisher?
It's drawn in quarterly.
Okay.
So normally they're out of Canada. Normally it's a lot of Canadian authors. Luke Healy is an Irish author. So different.
I don't think D&Q have that rep anymore at all.
They're in Portland now, aren't they?
No,
they're in Canada.
Are they still in Canada? Okay,
they're in Canada. But I think they've kind of shed that Canuck thing long ago.
I mean, a lot of their big releases every month are Canadian authors, but I mean, they are just like Fantagraphics. They are a very international base of writers and that contribute and provide. They provide a publishing platform.
I mean, the biggest selling book ever is reprints from the 1920s. So, with Walton Skeezix, so Gasoline Alley reprints. So
but they have had some really great success in the past couple of years. Ducks, I think, is one of their biggest sellers by Kate Beaton, which is a great book. Wonderful book.
All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what was your best book of 2024?
So this was tough. This was really tough because there's been some really good stuff come out this year, and especially even in the superhero genre. There were a lot of books I was toying with, but at the end of the day, I had to come back to my favorite thing is Monsters Book 2.
Yeah,
by Emil Ferris. This is look unless Harrow County, kicks back up and starts again. My favorite thing is Monsters is probably in my top 3 favorite pieces of graphic literature ever. And so so in many ways, this was just anticipation, right? So why I love this book is because we weren't sure if we were going to get it, and because we needed closure. So that's one of the things that makes it one of my favorite books, but also because I thought it was very well done, and because I thought Emil Ferris finished what she started for the most part and continued on and told this very incredible story about this young girl who's growing up in 1960s Chicago, whose life and circumstances are just a hot mess, but who is intrigued by the world, who is curious and has a lot of life to her, and she is a weirdo, which I gravitate to, because I mean, I think we all just are, well, maybe not all, but I think a lot of us to some degree felt like that as kids. Like we were misfits. Like the reason she is a monster is because she knows she's different from everybody else. She's a lesbian. She's going to grow up to be gay or queer, at least somewhere on the spectrum. But like she's not, she doesn't fit into, again, like the nuclear family trope and stuff like that. At the end of book 1, we learn that her mother has died. And that was a very impactful moment for her, because a lot of the first story, she's dealing with loss. I mean, she's investigating a murder that that took place in her building. Somebody that she cared a lot about, or at least knew that was an important figure in her life, as they live in this basement apartment in Chicago. And she's seeing links to things everywhere, like the Green Men, to the same kind of conspiratorial nature as mafia stuff. And her brother Dees is an actual gangster, who that she both idolizes and looks up to, and is also slightly disgusted by, and just does, realizes that he's not the best person. And her world is odd. It's interesting, right? It's full of quirks, as she is trying to figure out how to decipher both the way that she reads the world as somebody who's obsessed with comic books and mystery and stuff like that, and who is left to her own devices, but also the hippie movement is affecting her, like living in a 1960s Chicago where mafia and gang violence is a very real thing in her world because of her brother. Being raised by a single mother at this time is a big thing. And Emil Ferris deals with all of that, what it means to be a young person who doesn't fit in, and to have, a girl who is not white, but white passing, fits into a white world, to have friends who are Black and who are queer, and who she talks with street workers, and just the weird ephemera of the world around her. And what I love about this book, and the same thing I love about the first one, right? It's done in ballpoint pen. It's done in colors, but it's ballpoint pen. It's on actual notebook paper. It's just fun. The book is not without its flaws, right? So if you know the history of this book, there was a lawsuit involved. I think basically Fantagraphics had to file suit to get a manuscript, right? To tell her, hey, like, we gave you a huge advance. You need to finish this book. The book is not finished. If you get to the last pages, it's left undone. There are things that are unpolished, but in some weird way that kind of adds to the provenance of the book. I feel like it gives something to it, because it's a story that's going to live with you, and you're always going to wonder a little bit, like, what other version of this was there, and what in a perfect world where she had wanted to finish this, or her hand had not been pushed, what would it look like? I don't know. It's got this little tchotchke characteristic to it that I find very unpolished and rough, and I like that, and I appreciate it, because I think it makes it denies closure for a book that's really about somebody seeking closure, seeking acceptance, and something that's being finished. It's not going to give you that, but it does give you some really gorgeous art. So I really am glad we got this. It's absolutely stunning. Plot wise, again, she's still investigating murder. She's trying, like the murder of Anka, who lives upstairs. She's trying to figure out where her brother plays in all of this, and she's realizing that he might be a bad person, even though she knows he's a bad person. But he might be a worse than bad person. And at the end of the day, she's just a little girl, right? She's she's a young person who's trying to figure out how the world is supposed to reckon with her. And she's lonely, and the book really shines through those moments. And I think it's incredibly heartfelt. I love it. Warts and all, unfinished portions of it and all. I appreciate that it exists.
Yeah.
Great. All right.
I haven't read the second volume yet. I can't wait.
And that did come out from Fantagraphics, right?
It did, yes. It's Fantagraphics.
Yeah. Okay. Because there was another book where it was also like an advanced lawsuit, but it eventually ended up. It'll come to me like 5 minutes after we're done recording.
Yeah.
This wasn't like the last. I can't.
I was also going to say, like, if you love the city of Chicago, whether you give a shit or not about comics, right? If you love this, which you wouldn't be listening to this if you don't, but if you love the city of Chicago, this book is all about Chicago, and the art museum is all in this, and they give love to Ivan Albright, who is my favorite painter. Like, I love Ivan Albright. The door is phenomenal. Portrait of Dorian Gray, and then came Ida. All of it is just amazing, and they give a lot of love to spaces in Chicago about art, and I think that's amazing. So it's a very Chicago-centric book.
That's interesting, because the very first tourist stop I ever went to in Chicago was the Art Institute, because of Le Grand Jatte, and because of Sunday in the Park with George, and that was my first tourist stop. Yeah.
So the first time I went to Chicago, I went because the American Gothic was there, and I was like, I want to go see this, and I saw the American Gothic, and I stood and looked at it and really appreciated it. But then I walked around the corner and I saw Ivan Albright's The Door, and I'm not joking. Like, my life kind of changed in that moment. Like, it's a very visceral experience. I fell in love and became just a huge fan of everything Ivan Albright did. I'm pissed because I don't have a giant coffee table iron Ivan Albright book. It's my favorite thing. Like, there's like and I read a book about it not too long ago. There's like a concept where you literally fall in love with inanimate objects. Like, it's not necessarily, it can be physical attraction, but it's definitely some type of attraction. It is something other than just you appreciate its use or whatever. I remember standing there and falling in love with Ivan Albright's paintings, with The Door. Like, something like my face felt flush, my blood was rushing, my heart was fluttering. It was like experiencing just a crush at one time about a painting. That's what Ivan Albright did to me, and I like to have him like show an appreciation in this book. Just yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping this episode up, and on our way towards the end, we have two segments, but the first one is where we show off our Geek Gets, things that we've picked up over the last 2 weeks that qualify somewhere within the orbit of geekdom. Steve, did you pick up anything along those lines today?
Why, yes, I did. Look, I've got Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is a poster for the Marvel animation series that starts next year. I think it actually starts at the end of January.
Yeah.
And it's a new sort of like a new version of Spider-Man for Marvel animation. And also, I did want to kind of point these out. McDonald's, for their Happy Meals, have been providing multiple toys. I guess they're these little pet simulator things that look very bizarre and come with stickers. Well, guess what? I got 3 of them. So you guys are also getting 3 of them. Because they come with 2 in a pack, so you guys are getting. But yeah, those are my Geek Gets.
Okay, Caleb, how about you?
So my Geek Get, I actually am going to throw a curveball. I had a record I was going to talk about, and then something came in that I was excited about, and I didn't even really buy it for me, but I'm really excited about. I got Baking Yesteryear for my husband, and I'm also going to get it. So if you're not familiar with this, Dylan Hollis is this guy who became famous, like a famous TikToker, because he would go and get all of these really antiquated cookbooks from like the baking books from everything from the Depression era. I mean, just old early 1900s, late 1800s, and he would try them. And there's some weird recipes, and he just eats. And sometimes they work, sometimes don't. He's hilarious. He's family. He's queer as all get out, but it is hilarious. He actually reminds me of my cousin Toby in a really fun way, and I love Toby. So, but he just bakes, and it's all of these weird, fun things. Chocolate sauerkraut cake, like what? Why? Chocolate mayonnaise cake from that usually tells when it was made.
The 60s?
Penguin
50s?
Icebox cake, magic ice cream. There's cowboy cookies, millionaire's pie. That was the 60s. Yeah, he has a 70s era. And so he just cooks all of these, like I said, old cookbooks and tries them out. It's funny. It's hilarious. Check him out on YouTube and stuff. He's also kind of cute for like a twink. So it's fun. I'm really excited about these. I actually want to try some of these. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Our friend Victor Rose says he loves expressions. Yes, and he has these little, like milk is moo juice. When he's doing like he's throwing all the rest, he's like moo juice. It's funny. He's got great mannerisms. Really entertaining.
Cool.
But it's also very fun. So I can't wait to try some.
My other half also follows him.
Oh, real nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Roger got me hooked onto him, and I'm like, I like this guy. It's fun. It's right. It's pleasant, and I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, cool. For my Geek Gets, I'll pick up where you left off and do some music ones. We were talking before. I've become very good friends with Glenn Pavan of Gay CDC, and he was visiting family this week, so we spent the day traveling around, and I had a birthday. It's so to the point where we're now exchanging gifts. And he had a Christmas gift for me, and I had a Christmas gift for him. And mine is not exactly appropriate for the holidays, but that seems to be kind of tied in with other material that we've talked before about on this show, this particular show. As much of a music fan as I am, as you can see back here, I'm not always the most perceptive when there are reissues that happen. You can see the beautiful Beatles box sets I have. That's stuff like that. I'm always up on, but not for every group. So in 2007, Joy Division offered up enhanced versions of their 2 studio albums in the Still collection, and Glenn provided me with the Unknown Pleasures, T-shirts of a lot of girls who don't know what they're wearing. So with this particular graphic, but it has a full live show from the factory in Manchester in late 1978, which would have been just before Unknown Pleasures came out. It's still in its rep, but at some point during the holidays, after I've hid the razor blades, I will be listening to this. They were a lot of contemporary indie music starts with them. I think that's undisputed. So that, and then another book, and this is also like not exactly a happy story, but I'm happy I got this book. One of the local stores had a Beatles event, and one of elements of the event was a kind of a lecture, kind of a discussion from Kenneth Womack, who is a somewhat local college professor, and he's written a number of books about the Beatles and inhabitants in their orbit. And this book, Living the Beatles Legend, it's the untold story of Mal Evans. Mal was their principal roadie, and both Mal and Neil Aspinall were 2 people who were there pretty much for the entirety of the Beatles' existence, from Liverpool to their success. They were some of the last employees of Apple. And Mal's life took a weird turn in the 70s. He had discovered the group Badfinger, who were signed to Apple, and was their manager. But that eventually kind of got taken away from him in a really sleazy and surreptitious way. And he ended up dying by the term that's developed for it is suicide by cop, where you basically inflame a situation and there's no way out apart from law enforcement opening fire because you've threatened them, and in this case he threatened them with an air rifle after a very weird standoff at the apartment he was living in Los Angeles. But what preceded this is the real tragedy, because he just sounds like such a fun guy. I mean, he was their protector. The original line in Let It Be was Mother Malcolm comes to me instead of Mother Mary. Because he kind of mothered them. He made sure, that they were taken care of, which was, much more important when they were a touring band. But he still kept that role up until around 71, 72. And some of the big frustrations with that he had with them was that they broke up, and he always felt that if they had just been able to get over a couple of hurdles, that at least as friends they could have gone on, and thankfully you did see some reunification as time went on, but Mal didn't live to see it. And again, it's a downer subject, but what precedes the downer material sounds like a really fun and valuable guy, and really enjoying reading this. So those are my two geek hits. Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, and then the Beatles dynamic. I've always kind of had a dark fascination with that. Yeah.
I mean, I need to get this. So my boss at work, his name is literally John Lennon, and his family was. I mean, Lennon is his middle name. But obviously his dad and mom were Beatles fans, and so is he. I may get that book for him. I've actually got him a couple of comic books. He's not a comic book guy, but I've got him the Fifth Beatle and stuff like that, and he appreciated them. So I may get that for him.
Okay, and he has other books, and he's and he pops up in a lot of Beatles ephemera, documentaries and things like that. And one thing he said that really spoke out to me was about Lennon's death, how it hit him harder at 41 than when it happened, because that was the length of Lennon's life, and just seeing that he didn't get to experience it was weird. It was like a second assassination at 41 for him.
Yeah,
it was an interesting way of putting it, and I just really I like his style as well, his writing style. It's very it feels like you're in the room with the people. So good stuff. All right, well, we're up to our final segment, and that segment is the woofs of the week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar, where we woof at something which may be comic book related, but it also may be a film or a TV program or charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, my woof of the week actually is for two things, but they're two of the same thing. And that is finales. So two of the shows that I love and have been watching for the past 6 years for both ended this week. And that is What We Do in the Shadows and Star Trek Lower Decks. And both of them are just some of my favorite shows. They have such wonderful storylines, and I'm definitely going to miss them. But I do want to mention that Lower Decks had such an amazing, wonderful send-off that I think they're great. I think it was a good way to end it. Made me sad, but I'm like, it was a perfect way to go. And then What We Do in the Shadows, I'm not going to spoil it, but I will tell you that depending on how you watched it, you got different endings. And if you have Hulu access, you can see 3 of these different endings. And they're all absolutely brilliant. 2 of them are pastiches of horror movies. Well, not horror movies, but just movies in general, classic films. And one of them is an ode to Bob Newhart.
Okay.
And so very, very fun. And again, depending on how you watch it, you might get a different ending than other people. But if you do have Hulu, you can watch all 3.
All right, cool. Thank you, Steve. Once Caleb takes his fingers out of his ears.
No spoilers.
He didn't spoil, tiny spoiler there.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
now, I'm up to see. So
one tiny spoiler.
I told you guys, I know what you were talking about. It took me so many tries to finally connect with What We Do in the Shadows. Watched it, could not stand it, just did not understand it for so long. And then finally in October, I finally tried to rewatch it for like the 14th time. And I was like, I get it now. And this actually is funny. And I'm up to season 4, so I'm working my way through things.
Oh, you're almost done then. Well, have you gotten to Jackie Daytona of Arizona?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so you're still Steve. What's your favorite What We Do in the Shadows moment?
Oh my God. Probably. I I think the first major Vampire Council, I think it goes back to the first season, the Vampire Council episode where they reveal all these celebrities as vampires was so brilliant. So brilliant.
Yeah, that was really good.
Or Guillermo basically going Van Helsing and slaughtering everybody.
Yeah. I love when they go to so my favorite episode, one of my favorite episodes is the underground market. When they go to that and there's like the familiar fights. Great. It's so stupid.
I think my favorite is the one where they go out partying with the Count. Yep. And Nandor takes the traffic cone. I'm a Weezer. I fell out with that. I think Rob's favorite was the one where Nandor, where there's that culty group that temporarily loses their vampirism.
Mm-hmm.
With, was it Kree Summer or Ray Don Chong? I forget who it was. That's the one.
Yeah.
And when she starts escorting people out into the sunlight, that's Rob's favorite. Come on.
I both hate and love Colin Robinson.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
his relationship with Evie.
Kid Colin Robinson. But dude, there's some so another favorite episode. It's like when Laszlo is basically the dad, is trying to be trying to be a dad to Colin Robinson, and I'm just like what? I'm just like, but then he's Laszlo. When they're trying to get him into private school and they can't figure out which one's going to be the parents. I'm just laughing the entire time.
It's so well done. And when you finally get to the last episode, there is just so much great stuff in there.
Yeah,
they stuff in so much.
And the first one with the doll version of Nadia.
Yes.
There's just so many funny things. All right. Well, I'm gonna miss that show. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
So my wolf of the week is also going to a television show. Again, I struggled with this one because it's been a long week, and also last episode of the year, I was like, let me do something great. But I'm like, the thing that I've been enjoying the most is just sitting down with my hubs and watching Dune Prophecy. This show is fantastic. If you like the Dune mythos, it's Game of Thrones set in the Dune world, right? Like, it just is really fun. It's showing you all of the intricacies of the family. It shows you who and what the Bene Gesserits can be, what they are. You see all the same family names, but it's showing you the birth of the Muad'Dib prophecy. My one hang up, if you even want to call it a hang up, is apparently this happens like 10,000 years before the Dune movie. And it's all the same. Like, apparently nothing in this universe changes in 10,000 years. They develop no new technology. They're all just doing the same thing. And it's for 10,000, 10 centuries or 10 millennia. They are just the same. Like, nothing advances or doing that. I'm just like at least in Star Wars, they show you some different ships. But oh, well, I don't 10,000 years doesn't really make a difference to me. Maybe generationally, but it's really good. It is the way that this show is being ran, and just, the subterfuge of the show is fantastic. And you also like Travis Flimmel, who plays Desmond Hart. He's also from, I think, Vikings was where he got his first big break in. Dude is good, and dude plays like sexy, crazy, cool real well. I like him a lot in this, and has that kind of like biker swagger, you know what I mean? I like him a lot.
You should watch Raised by Wolves.
I've heard. I've heard. Wait, no, is that the one with the robots?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Yeah, it threw me off. Was not expecting it to be what it was. Yeah, no, we watched that, and I was like, huh. Yeah,
he just likes to show up in religious epics in sci-fi.
Yeah. And it works really, really well. But no, the show in and of itself, you really do appreciate the characters. It's Game of Thrones in Jodorowsky's world, or with that visual. So Frank Herbert's legacy lives on. I think it's really great, and it's coming out week by week, so it's it's making you wait for it, which is really fun. So Raj and I have a really good time talking about it. So go check it out.
Cool. All right, for my wolf of the week, I do have something that is Christmas themed. Steve, if you can put up the graphic. This just came out on Netflix in the United States and the BBC over in the UK. I'm not sure what their streamer situation is, but I do believe it's in Netflix for Canada. So many people may have access to this. It just came out. Wham! Last Christmas Unwrapped. In 2023, there was a full Wham! Documentary that also appeared on Netflix, and in some ways, this is kind of a follow-up. It takes a very focused look on their song "Last Christmas." Goes into the recording of it, goes into the chart situation where there was. I was very surprised they didn't mention Frankie Goes to Hollywood, because Wham! And Frankie were kind of neck and neck in '84 with the number ones. So for some reason that was never mentioned. But Last Christmas was going to be their final single release of the year. They had 3 number ones, counting George's Careless Whisper and the band's Wake Me Up Before You Go and Freedom. And they made a video. Everybody in the video, apart from the lead actress, was somebody within Wham's circle of friends. And it was so touching. It was so touching seeing friends reunite, because as they made a point of stating within the show, George kept this group of friends going together, until his death. And they kind of dissipated a little bit after that happened. So, seeing Andrew and the backup singers Pepsi and Shirley and the other people going back to the Swiss town where the video was recorded, and everything that they experienced during that reunion, it was a really well done show. Last Christmas did not hit number 1 in 1984 when it was released, because it was also turned out to be the same season as Do They Know It's Christmas by Band-Aid, which was a benefit record. Something that a lot of people don't know is Wham's royalties for Last Christmas also went to the Band-Aid Trust and continue to do so to this day. Last Christmas finally did become a number 1 in 2020.
So, of all times, that's so interesting.
Just hold on. If you were worried about getting Wham again and going to Wham Holla, wait till after wait till the season, see if you make through. I was out on like December 3rd. It was like,
I'm still in the game. I haven't heard, at least I don't think I've heard it yet. I haven't caught myself listening, but like getting like, there's that, like, I think I'm still surviving. I don't know how.
Yeah.
We won't hum a few bars.
Also, covers don't count. Jimmy's World or the other,
So James figured out, hey James, just saw that it's available on Netflix Brazil. So if you're in Brazil, it's on Netflix. Going to the queue right now, and also whoever retouched that picture should be flayed. It is interesting because George is missing most of his index finger for some reason. So, but also the light looks very weird.
This is taken from an actual photo session.
But
it's around here, but the basis of it was taken from an actual photo session, and there's some goofy looking pictures. And Steve, you said your husband watched it and was also found it very.
He did, yes. So for years he'd been doing the Wham Holla, like avoiding this song as long as possible. But this year he decided that wasn't important to him anymore, so he did watch this on your recommendation, actually, and loved it. Tears, everything was just very, very happy having seen it. So.
No, it's really well done, and it's surprisingly touching. And also, with people who may be interested in the recording, George Michael is the only musician on the track. He programmed the drums, he played the keyboards. He didn't even let Andrew play guitar. He ended up doing the guitar.
No, Andrew, no, let me do it. Andrew, no.
Because he knew exactly what he wanted, and he didn't get the number 1 that he really coveted, but it eventually happened.
George Michael does not get enough credit for being an amazing musician. He was really good.
No, I think as time is going on, that's a little more apparent, of just how much he did, because most of the, even the first Wham album, there are tracks on that first Wham album, like fantastic, like Nothing Looks the Same in the Light, which is a great track. If you've never heard it,
Yep.
Please do. That's all him as well. And it was cool seeing, somebody like David J. from Love and Rockets and Bauhaus saying, hey, this was a guy I kind of dismissed, and then ended up in a cab where Jesus to a Child was playing, and then from there, like, I became a great fan. So I do think that there is a reappreciation of the musicianship of George Michael. I think the other group that has benefited from that as time has gone on is Duran Duran. I think they're also kind of being recognized for the excellent musicianship involved with that group as time has gone on. So
I think Prince is at the top of that pile.
Oh, no, I would not lump him in. Prince was always revered.
Okay, maybe so. Maybe I just never picked up on that before I knew it.
I mean, even before he reached real success with 1999, that was there. I wouldn't lump him at all. And again, I have the benefit of being there.
Sure.
Yeah. No, he was always recognized for.
Yeah. See, I always just again. Well, and to be fair, I did not grow up in a household or grow up in a scenario that listened to Prince. Like, that was not a thing. And so I did not, really. Obviously, I'd heard the Batman soundtrack, but didn't discover him till later. But it was after I discovered him, and I was like, oh yeah, Prince is Prince. Like, he wrote all these or did all these amazing songs. And then it was like, oh no, he's like one of the top 10 guitarists of all time. Like, dude's an amazing musician.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize it later on, but
he always had the rep.
Caleb discovers America like every day. So
All right. Well, so we're wrapping this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the social media as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on Facebook, however, as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. If you were watching us a little later or contemporaneously through YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. The next episode will be our 300th episode. We've made it to 300 episodes. So we don't know exactly what the format will be, but it might be special. Or it might be shit. I don't know. But we'll see. It depends if certain people say yes. Let's put it that way. So at some point in the new year, it'll be in January. Let's put it that way. We will be coming at you with our 300th episode. That blows me away, because when the average lifespan of a podcast is 3.72 episodes.
Yep.
I that's something I'm proud of. So yeah. And that's it.
Good.
And happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah,
holidays.
happy Merry Christmas, all that. Happy Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
Happy solstice.
Christmas Kwanzaa. Yeah. However you want.
Happy Festivus for the rest of us. Happy Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
And a happy new year.
Yes. And a
happy new year.
Yeah, it's weird that it's we're going to 2025. This week has been a long year.
And I just thinking, yes, we're headed into the second Trump administration, but Superman's going to save us.
Yes.
It almost feels like that right now. It almost does.
Well,
yeah.
I guess do we have a woof and an explosion?
If you're listening to the audio version, and we'll be back we'll see you next year. We'll be back in a few weeks. Take care, everyone.
Woof.